Hey guys, Lazerbolt here, and welcome to another episode. So about 2 weeks ago, my beloved flight simulator PC that I've been using for the past 7 years fried out and died on me. We flew to some amazing places and some amazing aircraft, but I was already squeezing about every ounce of power I could get out of that thing. I'm ready for an upgrade. So let's just go ahead and build a brand new, more powerful, but still budget-friendly flight simulator PC. I always start every build by going to PCPartPicker.com. My number one priority is to get the best bang for the buck, and this is a great way to compare prices and to make sure that all of your parts are compatible. Alrighty, it took about a week for all the parts to arrive, and here's what we got. All of this stuff up here are parts that I salvaged from my old PC, and I was able to save a bunch of money that way. Altogether, I only had to spend about $750. For the case, I decided to go with this Cougar MX330 mid-tower. It's got lots of room, good airflow, and already comes with an exhaust fan pre-installed. One thing a good flight simulator PC has to have is lots of USB ports to plug in all your flight sticks, yokes, switch panels, radio stacks, and whatnot. And the front panel here has 4 handy USB ports. Well, that's a good start, but we're going to need lots more than that. Next comes the motherboard, and I went with this Z390 Pro. It's got 2 M.2 slots and 6 SATA ports to plug in tons of storage. And look at this, the back panel here has 4 USB 2 ports, 5 USB 3 ports, and 1 USB-C port. Including the case, this gives us a total of 14 USB ports. Let's go! For the CPU, I picked up this Intel 9700F for a good price. It's got 8 cores and 16 threads. It's not unlocked, but I'm not going to overclock it anyway. And this thing boosts up to 4.7 GHz right out of the box. We're going to need lots of power for this machine, and this MSI A650GL should do the trick. It delivers 650 watts of power, is 80 plus gold certified, and is fully modular. And looky here, they give you this handy little bag that has all of your cables and plugs in there. Neat. For the RAM, we're going to use this 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3600 speed 2-stick combo from Corsair. That's a pretty good speed for DDR4, and 32 gigabytes is more than enough. I also grabbed this 1TB SSD because I want to have one empty formatted drive plugged in when I install Windows 11, and this will be the new boot drive. Then I'll add the 4 drives from my original PC later, and we'll have tons of storage. Now for all the stuff I'm transferring over from my old PC. We've got a couple cooling fans here, along with my Noctua heatsink. This thing's quite a beast, and it'll keep that 9700 nice and frosty. So I managed to save a good chunk of change because I didn't have to buy a new graphics card. I'm going to pop in this GeForce RTX 3060 Ti. If you want to talk about good bang for the buck, you cannot do better than this beast right here. Don't be fooled by the fact that the regular 3060 appears to have better specs on paper. The 3060 Ti is way faster and more powerful, and you can pick one of these up for only about 350 bucks. That's a fantastic price for such an amazing graphics card, and I can't recommend it enough. Get yourself one of these. Of course, I grabbed a mitt full of SATA cables out of my old computer so I can plug in all these drives. We've got 2 ultra high-speed M.2 NVMe sticks here, along with 2 2TB SATA SSDs. That gives us almost 7 full terabytes of storage. Awesome. Well, somehow we're going to cram all this stuff into one case, so let's get going. Open up the case by removing both the front and the back panels, and we can install these cooling fans. Well, it looks like I'm only going to be able to fit 2 fans up front here because of that sweet 5¼ drive bay at the top. You don't see those very often anymore, right? Maybe I'll stick a spice rack or something up there one day. Just remember on these fans that airflow is in the direction of the motor in the bracket here. It comes in from the fan and blows out from the back. To make installing these things a little easier, I pop the entire front panel off like this. Just grab it at the base and give it a firm tug and it'll pop right off. So I put 2 of the fans in front and put the third one drawing air in from the top and blowing down onto the CPU and graphics card. Now let's pop that front panel back on with some satisfying snaps and we'll be ready to continue. Now let's install a few things onto the motherboard before we drop it into the case. We'll start with the CPU and heatsink. First, open the cover to the CPU socket and grab that processor. Now look for the gold triangle on one of the corners here. Make sure that the gold triangle on the chip is lined up with the triangle on the board when you drop it in. Absolutely no force necessary, just drop it in. Now let's just pop this plastic cover off of here and close it up. Time for the heat sink. First, we'll remove these 4 thumb screws and give her a good cleaning with an alcohol pad. Just like that. Might as well clean up that processor a little bit while we're at it too. Just add a pea-sized amount of thermal paste, they say. What a terrible unit of measurement, right? I mean, peas come in all kinds of different sizes. Now we need to line up the 4 holes on the heatsink with the 4 holes on the motherboard and attach it from behind with these little thumb screws. I'll just slide the Mobo off the edge of the box here and pop that screw in. Alright, now that we have 1 thumb screw in, it makes it a lot easier to move around and install the rest of the screws. Make sure that you put them in opposite corners to spread that thermal paste out nice and even across the chip. Now tighten them up a little bit with a screwdriver. Don't screw them down too tight, just make sure that they're nice and snug. I've got 2 CPU fan sockets here, so I'll just plug it into this one and tuck that wire away, just like that. Alright, time to install the RAM and get some memory around here. We've got 2 16GB sticks to pop in. Most motherboards will have 2 memory channels with 2 slots each. Let's use the first channel and put these sticks in A1 and B1. Manufacturers used to recommend that you use the pair of sockets furthest away from your CPU. I haven't heard that in a long time. I'm not even sure that's a thing anymore. I know it doesn't make much difference. Now spin your stick to line up that little notch and click them into place. Ordinarily, it would be a good idea to install any M.2 drives right now because it's going to be a lot more difficult to do once the motherboard's in the case, especially since the M.2 slots are buried behind the graphics card. But I only want to have the fresh new SSD in the computer when I install Windows 11, just to make sure that it keeps everything together and creates a nice clean boot drive. After that, once everything's running smoothly, I'll have to open everything back up and install those 4 additional drives. We're looking pretty good here. I think we are ready to drop this into the case. Make sure that those little metal standoffs are screwed into the case to match the mounting holes on your motherboard. There's usually about 8 or 9 of them. Also, make sure that there are no extra ones screwed in that could short something out in the back of your motherboard. Alright, looks like we're good to go. Well, I love the fact that this motherboard has the I/O shield built right in. But if your motherboard doesn't, you'll have to snap it in now. Now place it in there like this, making sure that everything sticks out the back like it's supposed to. Well, this exhaust fan here is totally in my way, so I'll just take that out and we'll try again. And there you go, everything fits nice and snug and the mounting holes are lined up with the standoffs. Let's go ahead and screw this thing down. And don't forget to screw this fan back in over here. We've got 4 fans here to plug in. There's a fan header right up here that's perfect for this back fan, and 3 more down here for the rest of them. Alright, I routed these 3 fan wires around the back of the case here and out this hole before I plugged them in to keep everything nice and clean. And then plugged in the exhaust fan up here. We are ready to get some power to this beast. Here's all the cables we're going to need. This big one here is the 24-pin main power. This is the end that plugs into the power supply. The big plug goes down here and the smaller one gets plugged in up here. Now grab one of those 8-pin CPU power cables. This little clip is small on this end, and that's the one that fits into the power supply. The other one is a little bit wider, and that's the one that goes into the motherboard. We're also going to need this 8-pin PCIe power cable for the graphics card. It's got 2 separate plugs coming out of it to power 2 separate devices, but we're only going to need one. It's actually a 6-pin connector and a 2-pin connector, and you just put them together like this when you plug it in. We also need a SATA power ribbon to run all of our SSD drives. This strip has 3 power plugs on it, and we can power all 3 of our SATA drives with just one. I'm also going to plug in a second one to make it easier to add any hard drives in the future. Okay, for the 24-pin main power, let's plug in the small one first here. You can see how that clip goes up. Now we need to twist the big one around so the clip is facing down and plug it in. Bingo! We can actually plug the 8-pin CPU power cable into any of these 8-pin sockets. But they got this one right next to the main power, so we might as well use it to keep everything together. The PCIe graphics card plug can also be put into any of these 8-pin sockets, so we'll just stick it right here. And our SATA cables plug in right here where it's labeled SATA and Molex. Do people still use Molex? I mean, what the hell could they even be plugging into this thing? Maybe some kind of an optical drive, or who knows. And don't forget that extra strip we're going to plug in for expanding in the future. I'm just going to leave it all tied up like that with a twisty and it'll stay nice and neat. Now we're going to pop the power supply into the case and secure it with this little bag of screws they gave us. Notice how there's a mesh screen on the bottom of the case, and that's where the fan on the power supply blows out, so point that down. Now make sure that the back of the power supply is pointing out the back of the case and stuff that sucker in there. Pop these screws in there nice and tight and we got ourselves a power supply. The case has a bunch of holes cut out so we can route each of these wires through exactly where we're going to need it and keep everything nice and tidy. Let's get that 24-pin main power going. Obviously, it plugs in right here. It's got this clip, and notice that the socket has a little ridge on one side. That's where it goes. You can't plug it in the wrong way anyway, but that's where it goes. Now stuff any slack back through the hole and keep everything nice and neat. The 8-pin CPU power plug goes in right here. Some boards like this one have an additional socket next to the regular 8-pin one that you can usually just ignore. Unless you're doing some kind of heavy-duty overclocking or trying to run some kind of thread ripper with a heavy power draw, you just won't need this. It doesn't actually deliver more power to the CPU, but it spreads the load out over more wires and keeps everything from overheating. Like I said, we can ignore that and just plug in right here. Looks like I can stuff the cable up here behind the fan and hide everything out of the way. Nice. Now let's check out all these cables coming out of the case. This blue one here is the USB 3 plug, and we'll put that through this hole. And this one here is the USB 2 plug. We'll stuff that right through here. Notice how this USB plug has 10 holes and one of them is blocked off. Now look at the header marked USB 2. This motherboard has 2 of them. Notice how they have 10 pins and one of them is missing. So you can only plug it in one way. Like that. Our USB 3 plug has a little nub right here, see? That lines up with the notch on the socket that's labeled USB 3. Again, it can only be plugged in one way. Here we got the HD audio plug and a bunch of front panel headers. The HD audio is another 10-pinner, but it's missing a different pin, so it can only be plugged into one place. Right here is a socket named front audio, and it has the same pin pattern, so that's where it goes. Now we need to plug in the HDD LED, the power LED positive, the power LED negative, the reset switch, and the power switch. Right here. The power LEDs go up here. The HDD LED goes right here. Power switch in the red one. And the reset switch goes here. Time to install our SSD storage drive. We've got 6 SATA ports right here labeled 0 through 5. It doesn't matter which one we use, so we'll just use number 0. Grab a SATA cord here. Both ends of these are exactly the same, so it doesn't matter which way we put this. We'll route one end through the cutout and plug the other end of it into the port here. This is going to be the data cable for our SSD. Now go around the back and alrighty, there it is. Your SSD will have a small plug and a big plug. Plug the data cable into the small one here. It's got kind of an L-shaped thing going on, so you can only plug it in one way. Now grab that SATA power cord that we plugged into the power supply earlier. Remember this thing with the 3 plugs? It doesn't matter which one we use. Now we'll use 4 screws right here and attach this thing to the case. Pop them screws in from the other side and we're good to go. Alrighty, we're almost done here. Time to pop in that graphics card. We're going to use this PCIe X16 slot. We're going to have to remove these two expansion bay covers so it can stick out the back. These are a little odd on this case. They're not held in with screws. Instead, you just kind of wiggle them back and forth until they snap off. They do give you an extra cover though, so we're going to use this to cover that slot on top when we're done. Open the little clamp on the side here and we'll click this bad boy into place. We're going to secure this really good with a couple of screws, alright? Never leave your graphics card just sagging like this. That's a great way to wreck your PCIe slot. Hey, look I've got a neat little cover here that I can remove and it gives me access to the expansion bay screws. Man, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with this cheap-ass $60 case. This thing is great. Ta-da! Nice and solid. We are done here. Let's pop this expansion bay cover in that open slot and keep everything looking nice. Grab your PCIe power cord. Remember it's got two plugs and it doesn't matter which one we use. Each plug has two pieces here and we'll just hold them together as we plug it into the graphics card. Just like that. Now hide that cord as good as we can and we're done. This PC is ready to use. Let's get this case put back together. The back of it here always looks like a huge mess, but just make sure that nothing is touching the back of the motherboard itself, and we'll slide that back cover back on. Now we pop these thumb screws back in and secure it. Oh, and don't forget to replace that PCIe expansion bay screw cover thingy, or whatever it's called. Alright, this is the big moment. Let's plug this beast in and turn it on. I'm just checking to see if all the fans are working and everything lights up properly. Since there's no Windows installed on here, this isn't going to give us a full boot up sequence, but you can usually tell right away if something's not plugged in right. So far, so good. After a few moments, all the lights and fans are fired up perfectly. Good beans. Man, this thing looks awesome. I love that. Alright, now for the most satisfying part of any computer build. Time to remove that protective plastic. Oh yeah. Now the first thing I'm going to do is plug it into a monitor with a mouse and a keyboard and boot it up into BIOS. I just want to check the BIOS version really quick. If it's a relatively new one, I'm just going to leave it alone and install my Windows boot stick. But if it's a really old BIOS, I'm going to flash the motherboard first with the latest update before installing Windows. Either way, I am going to be a busy boy for the next few days, updating Windows and installing all of my software and my flight simulator hardware. Well guys, I'm pretty excited to start using my new flight simulator computer here. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the chat below. Also consider liking and subscribing. Okay everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video and thanks for watching. Bye now.